You ever been worried that when you die, someone's gonna break into your coffin and try to steal your body? So worried that you buy a device that you put it in your coffin, and when they open it, it blows their head off? I don't think many people have had that thought, but apparently in the 1800s, a lot of people did. In the 1800s, grave robbery was actually a very lucrative business, if you can call it a business. At the time, medical science was improving rapidly, and they needed bodies that they could dissect and use as cadavers. The thing is, back then, it was rare for people to donate their body after they died, mostly because of religious reasons. Also, I can probably see when this was first proposed, it was a very weird concept to have a group of people stand around you and chop you up after you die. So yeah, it wasn't very popular to donate your body. Secondly, the only bodies medical institutes were allowed to get were from criminals who had been executed. And you may have heard the term before, death and dissection. And that's where that comes from. If you were executed for a crime, you would be given to the medical schools for them to rip you apart and chop you up and do what they had to do, you know? The name death and dissection does go pretty hard though. So since bodies weren't readily available for medical schools, they would pay for them. So this caused people to go to fresh graves and try to dig up the bodies before they decomposed and then sell it to a medical institute. And I guess the medical institute just looked the other way and pretended that they didn't know this was taken out of the ground. Originally, grave robbing was for the purpose of finding jewelry on the bodies, which would be pretty lucky and probably not worth your time. But when medical science started to progress, these grave robbers now knew every grave they dug up was surefire money because they could sell the body. So it was no longer a gamble. Eventually they learned it would be a gamble, and the gamble was their life. Because after this, people started booby-trapping their coffins. And whenever a problem arises, you know there's always a businessman who wants to capitalize, so there were many patented ideas for protecting coffins. One that was used was called a cemetery gun, and it sounds dangerous as hell. It was basically a flintlock blunderbuss, which is essentially a musket that shoots out a ton of different pellets everywhere. So they put them at the foot of the grave. Then there was a ring on the front with a rod that connected to the trigger. Then they had wires coming off of this ring. If somebody tripped over the wire, the gun was on a swiveling base and it would swivel towards them and take a shot. Could you imagine installing one of these? Basically putting a cannon on a swiveling pivot and just hoping it doesn't go off. This was the first dedicated idea to protect graves. Of course, there was the old-fashioned idea of just guarding the grave yourself. So some people, if they were rich, they would hire guards for their grave until the body had decomposed enough. And that was the goal. These devices were only supposed to be there until the body had decomposed to a point where the robbers wouldn't make money off of it. So rich people had the guard method, but people who didn't have that kind of money would dedicate different family members to go and protect the grave for several weeks. This is how much of a rampant problem grave robbing was. The cemetery gun kind of worked, but grave robbers soon figured them out and figured out how to deactivate them. So more aspiring engineers created new devices to protect graves. The term Coffin Torpedo actually referred to several different devices. One device was essentially a shotgun, and you'd put it under the coffin lid, and then if somebody opened the lid, it would just shoot lead balls out everywhere. And there are confirmed kills from this device. The other Coffin Torpedo is the way I would have went. Basically, they would just dig down to a certain point and set up what's essentially a landmine. So if anyone's digging down, they'll hit a wire, trip off this landmine, explode themselves, and probably explode the body too. But you know, if someone's robbing my grave, I don't care if my body goes with them. I don't know, I feel like the afterlife's gotta be boring, and then having your body explode and kill a robber is probably the most exciting thing that's gonna happen for the next 1,000 years. So I'm down with that strategy. It seems at the time that graveyards were just straight up dangerous. There's booby traps, guns, wires, guards, explosives, shotguns. I think that was a good deterrent to get people to stop stealing bodies. There were also less deadly strategies of protecting your grave. There was a thing called a mordrake, which was essentially bars and concrete or some kind of bars that were put over your grave so no one could dig down under it. I guess if they really wanted to, they could go from the side, but it was probably just too much work for them. Other companies started selling coffin vaults, which were basically impenetrable or just too much effort to get into. You have to respect the hustle of these grave robbing deterrent entrepreneurs trying to sell stuff to you even after you're dead. That's dedication. Now, it's not really known how many of these devices were actually used. The patents exist, and that's how we know they exist, but I don't think anyone's gonna go start digging up graves that might be filled with explosives and shotguns. So I guess we'll never know. Most likely, these devices were pretty rare. Most of them were invented in the late 1800s, where grave robbing was at its highest, but quickly after that, its popularity would decline very quickly. And this was due to a couple reasons. A solution that the government created, which stopped the problem, but may have created other problems once you hear it. In 1913, they decided that medical schools could get the bodies of poor people, in America, at least. But yeah, that was their brilliant solution. Just give poor people's bodies away. Like, It worked though, but Jesus. There was other things that helped, like the advancement of refrigeration technology. Now there was less of a premium on getting fresh bodies. They could keep bodies around for longer. And medical science moved past the need to have so many cadavers. They were just dissecting less and trying to learn how to actually help people, you know? Everyone has to start somewhere. Like buying bodies off grave robbers so you can dissect them and figure out how the body works. I'm glad that our starting point is like working a shitty minimum wage job instead of participating in the illegal black market of bodies that are decomposing. There's a lot of medical photos you can find that are black and white and just show like a bunch of dudes standing around a table, a dissected person right there, and most of the time the bodies don't look like they're in good condition. In terms of decomposition, they look a bit past their date. Probably because they had just been dug out of the ground and were sitting there for who knows how long. It is kind of funny though that in the medical field, ethics is a huge part of what they learn. But modern medicine's origins starts with them just looking the other way and pretending these bodies weren't just dug out of the ground. I guess you gotta do what you gotta do, but don't worry, the government figured it out. They'll just give them poor people. That's the solution. Ay, ay, ay. Luckily now, the idea of donating your body isn't seen the same way. It's seen as a lot more normal. So these grave robbing problems don't really exist. I sometimes do wonder though, when billionaires are they buried with their expensive watch on? I feel like somebody might find it worth it to dig up a grave if they're gonna get like $100,000 Patek Philippe or something. But yeah, that is not a suggestion. I'm not saying do that. Do not dig up billionaires' bodies and steal their Rolexes. You didn't hear it from me. I didn't say it. Anyways, if you liked the video, subscribe, leave a like, comment. You know how it is. And don't go digging up graves. You might explode or be shot in the face with a shotgun. Or just, morally, it's not a good idea. Don't do it.